My name's Denise Foster. I'm 28, and until one dinner shattered my illusions, I thought I understood my own family. We sat around the dining table in our grand Atlanta home, the kind that practically whispered old wealth. But I wasn't there to fit in or play by their rules. My world revolved around my startup, a tech vision I believed could change lives. To them, though, it was nothing but a foolish obsession I should have abandoned long ago. Dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, I looked out of place beside their polished luxury and self-satisfied grins. The room felt heavy, the quiet broken only by the faint clatter of silverware. Then my mother leaned closer, her tone sharp enough to slice through the air. "Denise, we're done rescuing you," she said flatly. "We're not your bank anymore." My father gave a stiff nod, his gaze distant and cold, as if I were some failed investment. My sister's laugh followed, light, cruel, and meant to sting, as she reminded me I'd never reach her level. They thought they were humbling me, showing me my place, but I stayed calm, my phone buzzing quietly in my pocket with a message that would soon rewrite everything they thought they knew. They couldn't guess what was coming, nor that I now held the leverage over all they treasured. If you think their arrogance lasted, stay with me. This story is about to turn their smirks into silence, and if you're curious how I twisted their words back on them, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell, because what comes next will leave you stunned. Just as the first appetizers arrived, my mother's voice dropped to a chill. "Denise, that little tech fantasy of yours is a waste of time," she said, cutting through the soft clink of crystal and glass. Her gaze cut straight through me, filled with the kind of disappointment that made it seem like my ambition to build a startup was a personal offense. Mom leaned back, the light from the chandelier catching the diamonds at her neck as she sighed. "You're almost 30. When will you finally grow up and get a real job?" she asked, each word laced with frustration. Dad followed immediately, placing his wine glass on the table with deliberate calm, his expression severe, like a judge delivering a sentence. "Your sister's out there closing million-dollar deals in real estate," he said, motioning toward Tracy, who sat smirking like she'd already won. "That's what success looks like, Denise. Not some app that hasn't earned a cent." His tone sliced deeper than he realized, but I kept my face unreadable, my hands resting neatly in my lap. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me flinch, and of course, Tracy couldn't resist twisting the knife. She flipped her hair, her gold bracelet flashing under the light as she launched into her favorite subject, herself. "Just signed a contract for a downtown condo project," she announced proudly, her voice thick with self-importance. "7 figures, Denise," she added, pausing just long enough for it to sting. "That's the kind of money you'll never see chasing your childish dreams." Her laughter cut through the air, sharp and cruel enough to twist my stomach. "Still living off our leftovers, huh? Always begging for help." Mom gave a stiff nod, her lips pressed into a thin line. "We've gone too easy on you," she said, folding her napkin with slow precision. "Tracy's right, you can't depend on us forever." The words landed like blows, but I stayed still. I'd heard the same chorus every holiday, every so-called family dinner, a script they never tired of performing. To them, I was the weak one, the embarrassment who didn't fit their picture-perfect high society image. Dad leaned in, his tone firm but self-righteous. "It's time you stood on your own, Denise. No more safety net. You need to learn what it means to earn something." His voice carried the authority of someone pretending he'd clawed his way up, though every inch of his comfort had come from inherited wealth. The house, the cars, even the wine in his glass. I felt the hypocrisy like a cold wind, but said nothing, letting their words wash over me. Tracy wasn't done. She took a slow sip of wine, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Maybe follow my example," she said smoothly. "Get your real estate license, start small, actually contribute to this family." Her tone dripped with condescension. "You're not built for this startup fantasy. It's embarrassing, honestly." My jaw tightened as my hands gripped the chair. I'd grown used to their judgment, but tonight, every insult dug deeper. Each one a reminder of how little they believed in me. They saw me as a burden, a dreamer destined to fail. But I wasn't there to defend myself or seek validation. My phone in my pocket felt heavier than ever, a quiet symbol of what they couldn't yet imagine. They thought their wealth gave them control over my future. that their money and opinions shaped the limits of my life. The dining room pulsed with their smug confidence, Mom's sharp looks, Dad's patronizing tone, Tracy's gleeful cruelty. They believed they'd won. I let them talk. Every word was another shovel of dirt on their own grave. When the time came to toast, glasses clinking in arrogant unity, my phone vibrated. I glanced down and froze for a heartbeat at the name flashing on the screen, Margaret Lee, Trust Fund Manager. Her message was short but devastating. Approve monthly allowances for Edward, Nancy, and Tracy Foster, $20,000 each. Sliding the phone back into my pocket, I felt calm settle over me. The balance of power had just shifted. They thought they'd humiliated me, but soon they'd understand exactly who held their future in her hands. Across the room, I caught Shannon Reed's eye. My closest friend and partner in the startup knew exactly what this night meant. She'd stood beside me through endless nights of coding, every nerve-wracking investor pitch, every setback that nearly broke us. I gave her a small nod, and without a word, she excused herself from her conversation and joined me by the bar. "They're not ready for what's coming," she murmured, her voice low but brimming with electricity. "They have no clue you're the one in control here." I leaned in slightly, keeping my tone even. "They've been living off my choices for years," I said, watching Mom, Dad, and Tracy laugh among their glittering circle of friends. It's time they finally understood. Just then, the dining room doors swung open. Margaret Lee entered, her heels striking the marble floor in crisp, deliberate beats. She carried a slim leather folder, her expression composed, yet charged with purpose, as if she'd come to deliver a reckoning. The hum of conversation faded. Guests glanced around, sensing the shift. Mom's smile faltered, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Dad set his wine glass down, his posture stiffening. Tracy stopped mid-sentence, her gaze darting to the newcomer. "Miss Foster," Margaret began, her clear, firm voice cutting through the air. "I need your authorization for the trust fund disbursements." She opened the folder, revealing neatly arranged documents stamped with the family trust seal. Every head in the room turned toward me, confusion rippling like a current. Dad broke the silence with a harsh laugh. "This is ridiculous," he scoffed. "Denise, managing the trust, she's a dreamer chasing a failing app." Mom's voice rose, brittle and strained. "There must be a mistake, Margaret. Our daughter doesn't control our finances. She can barely handle her own." Tracy crossed her arms, smirking. "Is this supposed to be a joke? Denise, in charge of our money? Please." Margaret didn't blink. Calmly, she slid a document across the table and tapped a highlighted line. "Miss Denise Foster has been the sole trustee of the $20 million Foster Family Trust since the age of 25, she stated, her voice precise and unwavering. "She manages all assets, the estate, the vehicles, and the monthly disbursements of $20,000 each. No funds are released without her consent." The room fell utterly still. Dad's complexion drained of color, his authority collapsing in an instant. Mom's hand flew to her necklace as if to steady herself. Tracy's smirk dissolved, her wine glass trembling between her fingers. Margaret closed the folder, gave me a brief nod, and turned toward the exit. "I'll await your decision, Miss Foster," she said, her heels striking the floor as she left the stunned silence behind. I rose from my chair, my voice cool and unwavering, cutting through the heavy air like a blade. "For the past 3 years, every cent you've spent has passed through me," I said evenly, meeting each of their stunned faces. "Your luxury cars, those endless vacations, Tracy's condo ventures, all of it depended on my approval. You thought you were in charge, but the truth is, I always was." Their perfectly curated world was beginning to crack, and I was only at the beginning. Dessert plates clinked softly as my phone vibrated again. I pulled it out, ignoring the awkward chatter that tried to fill the silence. A new message appeared on the screen, from Paul Carter, the bank manager overseeing the trust. "Confirm. Hold on all foster family allowances." My pulse stayed calm as I hovered over the reply, knowing exactly what came next. After years of being their scapegoat, it was time they learned what their condescension cost. I stepped a few feet away from the table, my voice low but resolute as I spoke into the phone. "Put a hold on everything. I said. No disbursements for Edward, Nancy, or Tracy Foster, effective immediately. Paul's reply came crisp and efficient. Understood, Miss Foster. Consider it done. I ended the call, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and returned to my seat, my expression unreadable. Tracy noticed first. She frowned, staring at her phone, her manicured fingers moving rapidly across the screen. "What is this?" she muttered, her voice rising with each tap. My cards declined. She tried again, her cheeks flushing as the same error message flashed. "This can't be right. I used it this morning." Her eyes flicked toward me, suspicion dawning, but I calmly lifted my glass and took a slow sip of water. Dad's fork stopped midair, his brows drawing together. "Tracy, what's going on?" he asked sharply. She shoved the phone toward him, her voice shaking. "My account's frozen, and the condo deal downtown is collapsing. They're saying the funds never cleared." Panic crept into her tone as she scrolled through a flood of messages from furious partners. Mom clutched her chest, her bracelet jangling as her composure faltered. "That has to be a mistake," she said quickly, though her eyes betrayed the fear spreading behind them. "Our accounts are stable. They've always been." She turned to Dad, her hand gripping his arm. "Edward, the house, the taxes, the mortgage, those are fine, right?" The question lingered in the tense air. I leaned back, my voice calm and measured. "The mansion belongs to the trust," I said, locking eyes with each of them, "and I control the trust. Without my authorization, there's no money for taxes, no payments, nothing." Dad's color drained. The confident patriarch facade cracked as uncertainty took its place. "That's absurd," he muttered, but the weakness in his voice said otherwise. "We don't need your permission to live our lives," Tracy burst out, her voice tight with panic. "You're bluffing. You can't just cut us off. We have our own money, our own business deals." But her hands trembled, fingers gripping her phone like it was her last safety line. Mom tried to step in, her tone cracking under strain. "Denise, please, be reasonable. We've always supported you. This is just a misunderstanding." The words rang hollow, empty echoes trying to mask years of dismissal and contempt. I only shook my head, my expression unreadable. "For 3 years," I said evenly, my voice slicing through the air, "I've signed every check that's kept your cars on the road, your vacations booked, your lifestyle intact. You thought you were in control? You never were." The truth hit like a physical blow. Excuses died on their lips. Tracy's phone buzzed again. She glanced down and gasped. Her largest client had just canceled their contract. The color drained from her face as her polished facade began to crumble. Dad tried to salvage what little dignity he could. "We don't need your charity," he barked, but the tension in his clenched fists told another story. "We've done perfectly fine without you." I arched an eyebrow, letting the silence drag. They could cling to denial all they wanted, but the truth was already settling in. Their wealth, their comfort, their entire sense of power existed because of me. Mom's eyes shimmered with tears, her calm exterior finally breaking. "Denise, you can't do this to us," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. But I didn't flinch. Their panic filled the room, raw and heavy, the air thick with fear. I felt nothing but the satisfaction of balance being restored. They had mocked me, belittled me, written me off as a failure, and now they were learning what that arrogance cost. The dining room fell silent again, the tension broken only by the soft ping of my phone. I glanced at the screen, my chest tightening as I saw the sender, a venture capitalist I'd pitched to the year before. The subject line hit like ice water. "Concerns about your startup's credibility." My jaw tightened as I read. Tracy had sabotaged me. She'd told investors my company was a scam, a desperate money grab. Her lies had tanked a crucial funding round and nearly killed my business before it even launched. I looked up slowly, my gaze locking on hers. "You told investors my startup was a fraud," I said, my voice low, sharp, and unwavering. Her face went ashen, lips parting in a silent denial. But I raised my phone, the email glowing in my hand like a confession. "This came from one of them," I continued. "They heard it directly from you." The room fell dead quiet. Guests stopped whispering, every eye fixed on Tracy as she stammered, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "That's a lie. Tracy snapped, but her voice wavered, betraying the truth she was trying to bury. Mom's eyes darted between us, her expression torn between guilt and defiance. "Denise, she was only protecting our family's reputation," she said, her tone trembling but still trying to sound firm. "Your startup, it's risky. She was thinking about what was best for all of us." Dad nodded stiffly, his jaw tight. "She didn't mean any harm," he added, voice low, almost pleading. "Tracy was just trying to keep our name out of gossip. You know how fast things spread in our circles." Their words hit harder than I expected. They weren't just excusing her, they were defending her. They knew she'd sabotaged my dream, poisoned my reputation, and they still stood by her. Tracy seized on their support, her tone turning frantic. "I had to, Denise!" she shouted, her eyes wild. "Your app was a disaster waiting to happen. It was dragging our family down. I was saving us." Her voice shook, her excuses flimsy, her fear bleeding through every word. I could almost hear her confidence collapsing as her empire unraveled around her. The room seemed to close in, the weight of betrayal pressing down like a storm. I set my phone on the table, my gaze locked and cold. "You all knew," I said quietly, the steel in my voice slicing through the air. "You knew she lied to investors. You knew she tried to destroy everything I built, and you still defended her." Mom's fingers clutched her necklace, eyes shining with tears she couldn't hide. She said nothing. Dad looked away, his silence louder than any denial. Tracy's shoulders sagged, the last of her defiance draining away. "You thought you could break me," I continued, standing straighter, my tone calm but unyielding. "But for 3 years, every luxury you've enjoyed, your cars, your trips, your deals, came from the trust I controlled, from me. And now I'm done." The word hung in the air like a final sentence. "No more allowances, no more trust fund, not a cent." Mom gasped, both hands flying to her mouth. Dad's face fell, the confident patriarch replaced by a man stripped bare. Tracy's phone slipped from her grip, hitting the table with a hollow thud. Their world, built on arrogance and deceit, was finally cracking apart. And I felt nothing but clarity. They had chosen lies over loyalty, image over truth, and now they would live with the fallout. Their devotion had never been to family, only to the illusion of perfection. As the last guests drifted away, I rose from my chair. The room was silent now, heavy and still. Mom, Dad, and Tracy sat motionless, their eyes blank, their power gone. I'd listened to their excuses for years, but not anymore. It was time to close this chapter. I squared my shoulders, my voice steady and final as I spoke. The voice of someone who no longer needed their approval, their wealth, or their world. "The $20 million trust is under my control," I said, meeting each of their eyes without blinking. "And starting today, every cent goes into my company. The same one you mocked, the one you said would never succeed. That's where the money belongs. Not $1 of it goes to you. Not now. Not ever." My words sliced through the silence like glass. Mom's breath hitched, her hand flying to her chest, but I didn't soften. This wasn't cruelty, it was accountability. Dad's voice broke the stillness, rough and trembling. "Denise, the mansion," he said, desperation creeping in. "If you cut off the funds, we can't pay the property taxes. They'll seize it." His confession cracked his perfect composure, the truth exposing how fragile their wealth really was. The grand Atlanta estate, once their proudest symbol of success, had become a burden they couldn't sustain. I met his pleading gaze, my tone unyielding. "That's no longer my concern," I said quietly. "You made your decision the moment you dismissed me." Tracy's head jerked up, panic flashing across her face. "You're destroying me," she choked out. "My clients are gone, my deals are collapsing. I'm finished without my reputation." Her hands shook as she clutched her phone like it might somehow fix everything falling apart. The woman who built her empire on image and influence was watching it all crumble, piece by piece. I felt nothing for her. She'd tried to sabotage my dream, and now her downfall was her own making. Mom's voice trembled, her eyes wide and pleading. "Denise, we're your family," she whispered. "You can't turn your back on us." But her words carried no power. They had turned theirs on me long ago, replacing love with judgment and loyalty with betrayal. I shook my head slowly, my voice steady. Family doesn't destroy each other's dreams, I said. Family doesn't lie to investors and try to ruin what someone's built. You did that, not me. I took a deliberate step toward the door, each movement lighter than the last. I don't need you to succeed, I said, my voice resonating through the hushed room. Everything I've built, every line of code, every pitch, every sleepless night, it's mine. The trust fund is just a tool now, one I'll use to prove you were wrong about me. My startup wasn't just an idea, it was proof of who I'd become. I no longer needed their wealth, their validation, or their family name. Around the table, no one spoke. The guests had gone quiet, watching the wreckage unfold. Dad sat motionless, staring down at the table as though searching for a way to undo what couldn't be undone. Mom's shoulders sagged, her expression hollow with defeat. Tracy's fingers hovered over her phone, but no message would come to save her now. They had underestimated me, believing they could manipulate and contain me, but the truth was finally staring them in the face. Their entire world had depended on me all along. I turned toward the doorway, each step deliberate and steady. You thought you could break me, I said, pausing with my hand on the frame. But I'm the one who's been holding you up, and I'm done. The silence that followed was suffocating, a far cry from the smug laughter that had filled the house earlier that evening. They had lost it all, their fortune, their prestige, their illusion of control, because when it mattered most, they chose betrayal over belief. As I walked out, the lights of Atlanta glimmered through the mansion's tall windows, a glowing reminder of the city where I had built something real. I didn't look back. Their downfall came quickly. Tax bills piled up, clients withdrew, and the glamorous life they'd curated collapsed piece by piece. I was finally free, ready to create something larger than their narrow world, fueled by my own resilience and the trust I now commanded. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, overlooking that same skyline. The space buzzed with energy, monitors glowing, ideas flying, a team united by purpose. My company's logo shone proudly on the wall, a symbol of everything I'd fought for. What was once mocked as a foolish dream had grown into one of Atlanta's most promising tech ventures, praised in local publications as a disruptor in its field. The $20 million trust, once a safety net for my family's indulgence, had become the foundation of innovation, rebuilt through my labor, my risks, my vision. Pride swelled in me, not just for the success, but for the quiet justice of proving them wrong. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad's empire had shrunk to nothing. Without the trust's support, they lost their mansion to unpaid taxes, forced to sell it at a loss. They'd traded their marble halls and panoramic views for a small apartment far from the city center. Word reached me through mutual friends. They now lived modestly, counting every dollar, surviving on Dad's fading investments and Mom's occasional consulting jobs. The life of gallus and luxury had been replaced by thrift stores and discount groceries. Tracy's fall was even more brutal. Her reputation, once spotless, was ruined. Her clients vanished, her accounts frozen, and her high-end career dissolved. She ended up behind a desk at a small management office, pushing paperwork for a fraction of what she used to earn. The designer bags, the magazine features, the invitations, all gone, replaced by hushed whispers at industry events. She'd called once, leaving a voicemail I never returned. Her betrayal, the lies she spread about my company, still cut too deep. Through it all, Shannon Reed never wavered. My closest friend, my partner in this journey. She had been there through every late night, every failed pitch, every small victory. As we reviewed the latest growth charts, she smiled, her eyes bright with pride. "We did it, Denise," she said, warmth in her voice. "Not them, not the trust, just us." I smiled back, grateful, not just for the success, but for the people who truly believed. Our startup wasn't just staying afloat anymore. It was soaring. New investors were lining up. Downloads were climbing by the thousands, and the buzz around our app was growing louder every day. Shannon's faith in me had been the steady ground beneath my feet when my own family tried to tear everything apart. As I stood by the window watching the city pulse with life, I realized there was a lesson I'd earned the hard way, one I wanted others to hear. Never assume someone is powerless, because the person you underestimate might be the one holding your future. My family had tried to control me, dismiss my vision, and even sabotage my work. But they'd been wrong about me all along. Real success, I'd learned, doesn't come from approval or inheritance. It comes from belief in yourself when no one else sees your worth. I'd built something real, not out of their wealth or their praise, but out of my own persistence, courage, and unshakable will. What happened to them wasn't revenge. It was consequence. Mom and Dad's pride, Tracy's deceit, they had created their own downfall. They'd called me naive, told me my dreams were foolish, but their doubts had become my fire. The trust fund they once leaned on had become the engine driving the future I was creating. I no longer needed their recognition to know I'd won. And to everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. Your support means everything to me, and I hope my story reminds you of your own strength. Never let anyone convince you that you're small. You have everything you need inside you to build something extraordinary. Tell me in the comments about a time you proved someone wrong, or a dream you're fighting for. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Here's to building our futures on our own terms, no matter who doubts us.